Welcome. Hi, I'm Mikki, and this is Mikkipedia, where I sit down and chat to doctors, professors, athletes, practitioners, and experts in their fields related to health, nutrition, fitness, and well-being. And I'm delighted that you're here. Morena, everyone. Hope you're having a great week. And for those of us in New Zealand or Australia, looking forward to the weekend ahead for a long weekend, Anzac weekend. Today, I am super excited to bring to you my conversation with Kathrine Switzer, and I have to tell you, I was blown away by having the opportunity to talk to her, how warm and open and honest she was. And as runners, I feel like there was just this connection, as I do with a whole bunch of the people that I run with, that you just sort of know a person on a different level when you have that shared connection. I'm sure I don't need to tell you who Kathrine Switzer is, but of course, for those of you who are unaware, Kathrine Switzer has long been one of running's most iconic figures. She was the first woman to officially run the Boston Marathon after registering as K. Switzer, and is infamous, if you like, for having pictures splashed of her almost being pulled off the course. But she is known for creating positive global social change and is such an advocate for women's running and has spent her life in that role. She was instrumental at getting the Olympic marathon up and running for the 1984 Los Angeles Olympics. She worked to get a global women's running movement happening by putting on events worldwide in the 70s and 80s prior to that. She has really just opened doors for women in that running space, but it is much more than just running for Kathrine and the women that she's been able to influence. Now she is the co-founder of a group called 261 Fearless, 261 being the number that she wore in that Boston Marathon in 1967, whereby she's created a global non-profit organisation that uses running as a vehicle to empower and unite women through education programs, local women-only 261 running clubs and social events. And it's through these networking opportunities that 261 Fearless Incorporated breaks down the barriers of geography and creates a global supportive social running network for women of all abilities and backgrounds to support and communicate with each other. It is amazing what Kathrine has done over the years, and we certainly, of course, we talk a little bit about that iconic 1967 Boston Marathon race, but more so we talk about the things that Kathrine's most proud of. You know, what was her biggest challenge, how she lives her life now. We talk about her husband Roger Robinson, who is an author and historian in running, and how amazing it is what he has done for running, and with himself running at the age of 80, and Kathrine herself is 74. It is absolutely astounding. I will, of course, include all of the links to our conversation that we talk about in the show notes, but for now, please enjoy this conversation that I have with Kathrine Switzer. Kathrine Switzer, thank you so much for taking the time to speak to me today. It is an absolute honour.
Oh, Mikki, I'm so glad to be here. And amazingly enough, we're in the same country.
I know. Do you know what an absolute delight it was when I was reading your book? And I read your, obviously, as a runner, Kathrine Switzer is just a name that is synonymous with women's running. But I finally got around to reading your book late last year, and then at the end, I was reminded, and I don't think it's explicit in the book, but of course your husband, Roger Robinson, I'm not sure if he's a Kiwi or if he's from the UK, but I knew he sounds Kiwi. And I'm like, that's right, you married a Kiwi and you spend half your time in New Zealand and you're in Wellington.
I know. Yes, Roger Robinson is much better known in New Zealand than I am, which is great fun because it gives me a break. from telling the Boston Marathon story. Don't worry, I know we're going to ask, and I'll tell you about the Boston Marathon story. But no, he is originally a Brit, but immigrated when he was very young, 25, for an opportunity to teach at the university, and it was at Canterbury, and then became the youngest professor ever, chair in Wellington at Victoria, and had a really brilliant career there. But you and I know him probably first and foremost as an incredible runner and writer of the sport. I mean, his books are just fantastic.
Yes, and I've been following his Facebook page, and actually I was listening to a podcast, Kathrine, a couple of weeks ago, and it was the 261 Fearless podcast, I believe, and you would talk, someone asked you, who is some of your biggest inspirations in your life, and you mentioned Roger, and the fact that at 80, he is running 2 hours a day. I'm not sure if not 2 hours a day, that's not right. He can run 2 hours, and he runs 10 kilometers, and he basically, after having, I may be wrong, I think it's knee surgery, he just built himself back up.
2 knee replacements. Nice. I mean, and it was really funny because with the first one, he was 72, I think. And it was tearful, that was essentially the end of a brilliant running career. And the doctor said, now you can walk on this, but you can't run on it. And Roger said, why can't I run on it? And he said, oh, well, no. And basically it came down to the fact that it wore the device out sooner. So Roger said, what do you think? I said, buy a new one, run.
Yeah.
Really? What is money for? I mean, I'd mortgage the house to be able to run.
Kathrine, that's, I absolutely hear you. And, I love running, and someone, and I have thought before that I can't possibly put into words how much running means to me. And I can't even describe why it is that way. And I feel like you would feel similarly about that.
Mikki, I had a couple of speeches, as you know, this morning because I had to postpone my conversation with you. I'm glad I did, because you're a nice way to kind of wrap up a very busy day that started at 5 o'clock in the morning. Because basically a lot of my work is American, and so their day is 7 hours earlier than ours, and although we're tomorrow. But anyway, I was trying to articulate to a running group why I've been running for 63 years. And all I could say was, I said, it gives me everything. And it's given me my health, it's given me my destiny, it's given me my career, it's given me, my husband, it's given me New Zealand, on and on and on. But most of all, it's given me myself. And I think that articulates it best, especially for women. That every day we come back in touch with ourselves, we feel our own self-worth, our own power, strength, and women often don't get the opportunity to feel that. And traditionally, and that's why we founded the nonprofit 261 Fearless, which we'll talk about in a minute. But most women in the world, have never had that sensation of being to value themselves, and I think that's the reason. The reason. It's not about running a great marathon. It's about just doing it.
Yeah, that is amazing. In fact, I'm currently away with some colleagues, and we're doing a virtual conference, and one of them is equally passionate about being active. And we were talking this morning at the gym, because wherever I go, I'm either going to be running or I'm going to find the local gym, and she feels very similarly. And we're like, I just feel so sad for people who haven't discovered what we've got through being active, like it's such again, I can't even put into words just that the cup is full when you are able to do what you can do being active. And what I find interesting with running as well is, you feel equally as amazing after you do this amazing session or run as you do when you're 5, 10 or like 20 minutes back from being injured, and you can run 5 minutes or 10 minutes or 15, and you're like, oh, that is enough for me right now. Like it is that absolute gratitude feeling.
You know what? That's it. It's a gratitude feeling.
Yeah.
And then I made up somebody said, what is 261 Fearless? And I said, it makes you fearless, free, and grateful. And that's absolutely gets it, doesn't it?
Yeah. And it's
so many things, but with 261 Fearless, what I love about, like I was just looking through again at the Facebook page, no, I'm sorry, the website. So my good friend Anna Bassett is actually a run coach up there.
Oh, I love Anna.
Yeah.
She has a bad back. How's she doing?
She still has a bad back.
Oh, gosh, can't we fix this?
I've tried to get her to along to my osteo, who I think would be amazing for her, but for whatever reason, it's kind of gotten to this point where it's either sore or she's taking medication for it not to be sore. And I really feel for her because she's such an active individual. You know, it's in her spirit to be active and to be outdoors and things like that. And she's every day gutted that she can't do what she wants to do.
Yeah, and a bad back, because I had one, and I have one right now, but I'll tell you that story in a minute. It's my own fault this time. The previous one I had, had me out of running for 18 months, and it was living a life really in constant pain, which back does, and lots and lots and lots of physio. But I mean, I absolutely refused to give up on this, and you can see that I'm standing right now. I started learning to work standing up at that time, and it was eventually a Kiwi who fixed my back, and it was that book, Robin McKenzie's How to Fix Your Own Back.
Oh.
And he was just a phenomenal chiropractor. And don't worry, I've told Anna about this as well. But basically, I should go to Fish Pond and order it for her or something. But I started doing his exercises. And to this day, all these years later, this was back in the 80s, I've continued to do those exercises, and they're my absolute go-to thing. You don't go to bed in the morning and you don't do a workout before doing those exercises.
Do you know, it's really interesting, isn't it, Kathrine? Because as a runner, we often joke that you're either about to be injured, you're injured, or you're coming back from injury. There's almost never any in between. And you do what you need to at the time, and so when you're injured, you're like, oh, I'm going to do these glute strengthening exercises, because of course the physio always tells you your glutes aren't firing, and I'm like, I don't know that my glutes have ever fired. It's just really the issue.
They've been on fire.
Yeah, exactly, but I'm sure they've never fired. And I'm like, right, I'm going to do these exercises because I know they're going to keep me strong and be a better runner. But things always seem to fall off, and I don't know what that is. And you only are reminded of that the next time you go out and something hurts and you're like, that's right, that glute exercise, I bet you had I continued to do that, wouldn't be experiencing this right now.
Yeah. But one of the things I've learned as I've gotten older, and in case people are listening and they're going to ask, I'm 74, I've been running for 63 years, that it does take longer to recover when you're older.
Yeah.
And therefore it's better to stay in condition than ever get injured, because coming back always takes forever. Yeah. And it's so frustrating and annoying. It requires such enormous patience. But I mean, that's what we have as distance runners. But still.
Now, you injured yourself in January, wasn't it?
Yeah. Well, you followed me on Facebook, so you probably have an inkling of what happened. Did you hear the story?
No, I haven't.
Well, I can go public with it now, because I've actually started to be able to jog just a little bit on this back, because I hurt my back. January 1st, I said to my husband, Roger, I am in the best shape I've been in 3 years. No Achilles problems, no hip problems, and now I'm really going to start my program and get ready for Tokyo 2022, because I'm trying to get the big 6 marathons. And he said, great plan. And I felt so great. But I said, but first I've got to do the jump. And he said, okay. And what the jump is that on my birthday, January 5th, I did a fundraiser. I said, if you guys raise $3,261, I'm going on my 74th birthday to jump off the Wellington high board in Wellington Harbor, that dive platform. Fortunately, you're not allowed to dive off of it, because I probably would have said I would have dived off of it, killed myself. I just about killed myself. But anyway, I get up there and I look down and I realize suddenly this is a different height, and it's much, much higher than it was, because the tide was out. Oh. And so it wasn't the matter of the depth of the water, but it was the distance from the water to the board was like another, story of a building. Yeah. And I said, oh God, these people have paid their money and I got to jump. So I jumped, and we made a video, and I was laughing and saying, I'm stepping outside of my comfort zone. Well, I landed on my back. I thought I broke my back, but anyway, I was in bed for 3 weeks, and my life was passing before my eyes,
Yes.
oh God, it was horrible. Really, I had a terrible reaction to the anti-inflammatories. I was once really a sick puppy, so I sort of lost January from my life, but honest to God, you can imagine how PO'd I was. Lying there saying, first of all, I'm grateful for being alive. I'm grateful for the fact that at least I can walk. And I always look at the gratitude first. And I said, and you were really a stupid person,
Do you know, dare I say it, Kathrine? I was in my head when you were telling me the story. I'm like, Kathrine, you're a smart woman.
Yeah.
What on earth? But isn't it? And then of course when you began the story by saying to your husband, "I'm in the best shape of my life." In the last, it's almost that cricket, the commentator's curse, isn't it?
It is. It really is. But you know what? It was one of my more valuable life lessons, which is, first of all, even at 74, you can learn to grow up. And also that at a certain point in our lives, we really don't need to have to keep proving ourselves. I'm always putting myself out there, taking on challenges, taking on things. And so when I was lying there in bed, I kind of went through all the things on my bucket list that now I'm not going to do, I don't need to do, because they were all uncomfortable things.
Yeah.
Like Kilimanjaro. I really don't need to climb Kilimanjaro, right?
Okay.
Taranaki. That's off the list. I really don't need to make an assault on Taranaki. It's a dangerous mountain.
Yeah.
I'm not a climber.
I completely appreciate that, because often people say, we need to challenge ourselves. We need to spend time being uncomfortable in order to grow, in order to develop. And people have said this to me with regards to doing an Ironman or, going mountain biking. And I'm like, I don't need that, actually.
You don't.
I'm really comfortable.
You don't.
I challenge myself in other ways.
Of course. Yeah.
Yeah. Like
and the final one was I took off the Comrades Marathon. Well, it's 56 miles. And I thought it'd be really cool to be 75 and do Comrades.
Oh, that would be. But you don't need to do it.
Why?
No,
Why?
I know. Yeah. Do you know?
Why don't I go all the way to South Africa and take a nice safari and go jogging, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's been done. It's been done by people much older than me. I don't need to do that.
So you just said that you're a person that kind of took up challenges and that's kind of been your modus operandus. Is it that little fire that you've got that really paved your life for you, and just how everything has evolved with regards to how instrumental you were at getting women running, essentially?
I think probably I got this chip on my shoulder about having to prove myself and bashing all the time. Probably in that Boston Marathon, that first race in '67 when the official attacked me and tried to throw me out of the race. He terrified me so much and humiliated me so much. Then I made the decision in the race to finish it no matter what. I was going to finish no matter what, no matter how embarrassing it looked. But I usually do my homework. And I had overtrained. I had run 50 Ks 2 weeks before. So I knew that I could get through Boston. But it was in the race when I realized, I knew I was going to be pilloried afterwards, because my first marathon was 4 hours and 20 minutes. And so I knew that people would tease me about that. Not the men. The men were wonderful. The men in the race were always, always wonderful. But the official, indeed, the next day, while he had a press conference, instead of going to jail, he gets a press conference, where he suspends me and expels me, DQs me from the race and suspends me from the Athletic Federation, and said, 4:20, I could have walked it that fast. Okay, so I said, all right, I'm not a talented athlete, but let's see what I can do if I work really hard. And so there were many, many 100-mile weeks and nights with sludge and rain and sleet out alone training, because I'm saying I'm going to prove it to this guy and the world that even a no talent like me can become a good runner. And I then, it took me 8 years, but I popped to 2:51 in the Boston Marathon, which is still a damn good time, It
is. My PB is 2:55, and I never managed to crack that 2:50 and also, I could never run that fast now. But your 2:51. That's a stellar time. It's
a stellar time. And in '75, it was like sixth best in the world and third in the U.S.
I know.
So, but anyway, boom. So I did that. And then it was like, okay, now we've got to create these opportunities for women. And
Yeah.
again, it was like total resistance, We got women official in the Boston Marathon. It took us 5 years. And then I began a campaign to get the women's marathon in the Olympic Games. And Mikki, I got to tell you, people thought I was smoking poppy, you got to be out of here. And the women were the worst to me.
Well, I was going to ask you about that, Kathrine. What is it that, because I've heard you say that a couple of times, and that, you got a really good support from the men around you, but for whatever reason, the women were just appeared to be completely unsupportive. What was that about?
Because, and it's the same today when women don't support women.
Yeah.
And I knew it. And I knew it was just going to be a matter of time.
Yeah.
That they were afraid. And here's an example. I was out training with my old coach one night, and a person ran us off the road, and on purpose, just bore down on us, and we had to jump. And I said, my God, Arnie, why is it always a woman who's doing it? And he said, because she's afraid of you. And I said, Arnie, all she has to do is put on her shoes, go out and run. And he said, I know that, you know that. She doesn't yet know that. Yeah. And I said, you know what? And then I got mellow again. And I said, when I'm 40, they're all going to be my best friends. And I was willing to wait. And you know what? It's okay. Because now there are more women runners in the United States than men. And it's the most glorious thing. And it's like you say, it's such an important part of your life. It's okay. I hold no anger. I only hold a sorrow for them at the time, because I really would have loved to have involved them, in what we're doing. And that campaign. But anyway, campaigning for the women's marathon was the same thing. I was up against men almost always, because they were heads of the federations. But I say, in every country but the US, Canada, UK, and New Zealand, the federations told me when I went there to organize a women's only race that it wasn't going to be successable. And they were very, very dismissive. Fortunately, I had a multi-million-dollar sponsor behind me, and I said, well, we're going to do it anyway. Thank you for your help. And we went ahead and organized it. And he said, well, nobody's going to come. And the women, of course, came by the thousands. Yeah. You give people an opportunity that's welcoming and non-intimidating and fun and feminine. Of course, they're going to come. And they realize, hey, I'm in a safe space. Nobody's going to heckle me or grope me. And other women are running, and we're there together. It's, it was hugely successful. And now, we did get the women's marathon in the 84 games.
Yeah. And I was watching, I obviously I read your account of what you've just described, and I was watching the movie Free to Run, and it showed footage from the marathon from Joan, I'm going to say Benoit. I'm not sure if that's how I say
Benoit. It. She pronounces it Benoit. And if you're Canadian, it would be Benoit. But,
okay. Oh, yeah, there you go. Yeah. So Benoit, and seeing her come into the stadium, and I got absolute goosebumps watching it. And of course, I know the story. I've seen it before, but to actually see the footage, I can't imagine what it would have been like for you to have been there seeing that.
Well, I was a TV commentator for that. And of course, and I knew all of the women really well. I mean, I kind of, we'd grown up together, if you see what I mean. Yeah. And I actually always thought it was going to be Ingrid Christensen who was going to win the race, because she was the current world record holder. And also because Benoit had been injured. And then, when she took the lead at 5K, I said, look, this is either the biggest mistake in marathoning or is one of the greatest acts of courage, because you don't do that in hot weather on a flat concrete road. And she left. She's gone. Yeah. And it turned out to be one of the greatest acts of courage and one of the best marathon performances ever. But Greta Weitz, who was trailing her, ran a perfect race. She just left it too late.
Yeah, so interesting, eh?
And how history has changed.
Yeah.
If Greta Weitz would have caught her at, let's say, 34 Ks, everybody would say Greta Weitz ran the smartest race in marathoning history.
Yeah.
So you never know.
Yeah. So I've got a couple of claim to fames with my running. It's so funny. I'm a legend in my own head.
You're a hero in your own life.
There you go. I'm a hero in my own life. So I won the 2005 Rotorua Marathon.
Woohoo!
But as you know, you only have the ability to race whoever is there on race day, obviously. And thankfully for me, all the fast runners were just happened not to be there. And that's no disrespect to everyone there, because the woman who came second, Mel Burke, is a fantastic athlete, and she's well exceeded what I was ever capable of with running. But I remember I was running with two women. One of them.
Wait, Mikki, I'm going to interrupt you.
Yeah.
Never apologize for winning.
Okay.
Okay. Never apologize. Do not diminish a victory. You were there and you beat everybody who was not there. Okay?
That is fantastic advice.
All right. You don't ever, I mean, women do this all the time. Okay?
Yeah.
Okay, see, I've taught you something.
Yeah, you have. Many, many things, Kathrine. I was running with Wellington runner, and she's unfortunately no longer with us. But
Bernie Portensky.
She was amazing.
Oh my God. I wore her name on my bib in the 17 Boston Marathon.
Oh gosh, she was such an amazing woman and such an amazing advocate for running, her and her sister, and we were all running together at 29K. And they couldn't believe that I was still running with them because how they felt compared to how it appeared that I was feeling. They're like, Mikki, if you're going to go, you have to go now. And I just took those words and I ran with basically the fear of God in me for like 13K, because I was fourth at the time, passed third, passed second, passed first, but I passed first at about 34K. I know. That 8K was the most scared I've ever run in my entire life, but my gosh, I still remember it, and I still remember the feeling. I remember Bernie and her words of encouragement, and that's the thing that you get from running, and women who run, of course there is competition, but more so than anything, it's just this collective feeling of support.
Yeah. It's amazing to see it in a highly competitive race like that, because usually, even your best friend, you're going to try to annihilate. Okay. But I was doing the commentary for the 2018 Boston Marathon, which was horrific weather conditions with the tremendous cold rain and fierce winds. And all of the top competitors dropped out. I mean, they got hypothermia. And I mean, it was a day to wear every bit of rain gear you had. And, you can't wear bikini tops and bottoms. And they still had on their wet gear. But the woman who was favored to win the race was running with Desi Linton, who won. But Desi was kind of the workhorse in the group, pulling the group. And Shalane Flanagan, who was favored to win, had to stop at a loo. And so Desi went with her and said, okay, stay with me and I'll get you back up with the leaders. And she got her back up with the leaders, but it was so cold that Shalane goes off the back, and then the Kenyans go off the back, and then the Ethiopians go off the back. And then there's Desi all by herself. And, the dream comes true. The workhorse is the one who's been out running in that cold and slush all her life. And she comes through and wins the Boston Marathon. It was glorious. Amazing. It really was fantastic.
Oh, it would have been. Kathrine, when you were asked who was most influential in your upbringing, the other people you mentioned were your parents. And you said it in your book as well, is that they never treated you and your brother any differently. And they expected the same things from you, and I guess they opened your eyes to the possibility that it could almost be the same. Did you know at the time that was quite different from what your girlfriends were getting, the messages, or just the whole, how was that for you?
Well, I didn't realize it was my parents who gave it to me. I realized I just didn't think the other girls got it. That's how naive you are. But it was my dad who at 12 told me I should run a mile a day so I'd make the field hockey team. And it was he who said to me, you don't want to be a cheerleader. Cheerleaders cheer for other people. You want people to cheer for you. And life is to participate, not spectate. I mean, all these wonderful pearls of wisdom kept getting thrown out at me, and as parents, we do that, right? You don't know what they're going to pick up, but keep them coming. But at any rate, my mother was a huge influence simply by her example, because she demanded that I get an education. And she demanded that I always earn an income without the support of a man.
Yeah.
And she said, because you never know.
Yeah.
And I always thought it was because my dad was in the Army and he was always going off to war and he was never going to come home again. But what she was saying is you never know about life, and you damn sure better be able to always support yourself and pave your own way. So both of them were huge. Yeah, when I was doing this mile a day run, to get ready for the field hockey team, my girlfriends would say, you're my friend, so I'm just going to tell you, but you might get really big legs doing that, And then of course later on it was like, you're never going to get any boobies. And then it was like, you're skinny enough as it is. And then it was later when I was then a mature woman, young mature woman, you're never going to have kids. Your uterus is going to fall out. And all of these myths, and it's bad to sweat.
Yes.
And it's unfeminine. You shouldn't do that. I got that stuff all the time. But, these are myths that prevail today hugely in other countries. I mean, you go to Southern Europe, South America, forget the Mideast. It's very, very tough in terms of the prevailing myth.
Yeah.
It's part of why there's this terrific, I think, misogyny still exists in many parts of the world. It's because if women are treated as cattle and baby machines or whatever, they will always be disrespected.
Yeah.
And that's another reason why running is so important, because it gives you the sense of empowerment, and it's easy, it's cheap, and it's accessible. So even poor women can do it.
Yeah. And was it your experience kind of traveling around to different countries in your earlier years? Is that what kind of sparked this sense of there's more than just running here? There is this, like, you must have been exposed to a lot of different lifestyles, which you wouldn't have had if you'd just kind of stayed domiciled in the States and just did your own running. Is that where this all kind of grew from, Kathrine? Because of course 261 Fearless feels like it's a product of what you've just described and like a way forward.
That's a good question, because I came from a military family, we actually lived all over the world. I was born in Germany, post-war Germany. I was always told that living in different places was an adventure. A lot of kids said, "Oh my God, we moved 3 times." My dad always said, you always make good friends. You're not losing those friends. You're creating other friends. And I said, yeah, but no. That was always an adventure. And so when I was trying to get the women's marathon in the Olympic Games, I was totally unintimidated about going abroad to figure out how to do it. And in fact, I had graduated from Syracuse University with a degree in journalism and public relations, my master's degree. And being 21 and extremely cocky, I decided I really had to go to the Munich Olympics to find out how to get the women's marathon in the Olympic Games. I needed to go meet these guys, these officials, to figure it out. So how was I going to get there? Well, I could get a student airfare. I took a loan for that. But then I walked into the office of the New York Daily News. Now, can you imagine this? Walked in the office of the New York Daily News and said, I just got my master's degree in journalism and PR, and I'm on my way to Munich to cover the Olympics, and you don't have a stringer, you should hire me. And they said, okay, can you write? And they pulled off some copy and they threw it down, and I wrote a story. He said, okay, great. Here's we can't get you real credentials, but here's some passes and see what you can do.
Amazing.
So now, that's really gutsy.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. And then I got on a plane and went,
Yeah. You know what, Kathrine? Like, it just felt when I was reading your story and as you've just described it now with your parents, it just felt like there were never these barriers put up to you. You were never told, or there was never this message that can only go this far or do this much, or you have to be mindful of this. Like, it felt like everything was just so, the world really was your oyster, and it was up to you to make it what you wanted. So the fact that you did that is absolutely unsurprising.
Yeah, sure, we all need to step out of our comfort zones, but one of the greatest things people can do really is travel. And that's another thing I absolutely love about New Zealand, is that they're the greatest travelers in the world, and the original Vikings, really.
Yeah. Yeah.
What's interesting also, in my little running group with 261 here in Wellington, there are about 20 women. And we sat down to coffee, I think, the first time we all got together. And I just went around the table and I said, how many of you were actually born in New Zealand? One.
Really?
We had Zimbabwe, we had Finland, we had Ireland. These women had been all over the world, and they had chosen New Zealand for a variety of reasons. but the perspective was fantastic. And that's why one of the reasons why I think this country is great is because it's a small country, so it always looks outward, realizing its own smallness, but never thinks it's insignificant.
That's a great way to put it. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Kathrine, if you had to like pick one thing, what would you be most proud of?
In the general sense, I would be most proud of changing millions, I guess, of many women's lives and empowering them through running.
Yeah.
The simple act of putting one foot in front of the other. It used to be, being a major part of getting the women's marathon into the Olympic Games. But now with 261 Fearless, I realize that we perhaps, because it's in its infancy, it's only 5 years old. It's going to be 5 in April. I'm going to do a big campaign. Contribute. We're going to be 5 years old in April, and we're already in 12 countries and 5 continents.
Yeah.
So how much bigger could it be? It could be revolutionary, or we could have another pandemic and stifle growth for a while. I don't know. You hope for the best when you have a startup like that, but that may, in the total fruition of time, be the greatest thing I did. But basically, I think it's empowering women. I never get over the happiness of seeing a woman out running.
Yeah.
And in fact, it's almost maternal, I'll be honest with you, is because I made the very conscious decision not to have children of my own. I just knew I couldn't do what I wanted to do if I had kids.
Yeah.
And other people could do it really well. You know, I could do things I thought were just as significant. But every time I see a woman running, I say, yeah, she's one of mine.
Yeah. Oh, what amazing. Could you have imagined that that's what you would end up doing? Like I can't imagine how it would feel to know that you were so instrumental in the whole running movement for women. Like it blows me away.
Well, yeah, but I mean, it's not like, aren't I great? And I feel wonderful. I feel wonderful about it. But I got to tell you, I mean, you feel terribly responsible. And you know what? You take on something and you have to take responsibility for it.
Yeah.
So that's sort of a never ending thing. And sometimes, I'm not saying it gets tiresome, but I get very tired, very exhausted.
Yeah.
But listen, the only way women are going to get ahead is for themselves to pick up and take responsibility. Nobody can do it for you. You have to take on that responsibility.
Yeah.
And fortunately, it's a privilege, really.
Completely.
If you look at it that way, it's a privilege.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. And, 261 Fearless is about empowering women. It's about educating women as well. I've seen
it is. We got a great educational program.
Yeah.
And we also have, it's a business opportunity too. I mean, you can earn a living creating a nonprofit and doing fundraisers and creating programs and stuff like that. So there's absolutely no reason why you can't do that. And I was getting ready to show you a picture of 261 Fearless, but we're oral and not visual today. So. Hey, talking about visual, now it's my turn to ask you a question.
Yes.
You're wearing a shirt that says "Run New York," so I can see the skyline of the New York City Marathon on that shirt. Tell me about your experience there.
Okay, so first I will confess I 100% planned to wear this T-shirt when we talked because I just knew you love running. I love running, and there's a history with you in New York Marathon as well. Like you were quite close, as I understand it, quite close to I can't remember his name, and it's
Fred Lebo, the race director.
There you go. Yeah, and yes, you talk a lot about that in your book as well. But yes, we did New York 2019. And I always wanted to do it. So I was in New York in 2011. I was in Washington, actually, for a public health conference, which I managed to get funding for fully. Well, only reason I wanted to go to Washington was because it was 4 hours down the road from New York. And I really wanted to run in Central Park. Like, that was a dream of mine. But I was injured at the time. So I got to walk in there and I just got to experience New York for what it was. And then in at the start of 2019, my husband Barry and I realized that if we could submit our times, which were sort of average, really. Well, mine was. His was pretty good for him. But we would gain places to New York. So there's no question we were going. Even though by the time we got to November, I think I must have been injured again because I didn't do a whole lot of training. But it was the best experience of my life. Like I would take in New York over a marathon win or a PB of any day. Like it is the most magical thing, You know, we were both absolutely jet lagged. We got 2 hours sleep the night before. You have to get on the bus to go to the start line. But they give you bagels, they give you coffee, you get Dunkin' Donut hats. Like when the race starts, like you feel like you're in the lead. You feel like you're winning from the start gun to the finish line because everyone is out there cheering for you. And it was the most magical experience that, I loved it.
Great. I'm glad you had a really good time. That's terrific.
Yeah. So how many times have you done New York, Kathrine?
I run the New York City Marathon not that many times. Let's see, 1, 2, 5, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. The last time was 2017.
Yeah.
Which was a fabulous experience for me. You know, similar to what you did. And when I won the New York City Marathon in 1974, it was held entirely in Central Park. And actually, it was a harder race than it is now because of the huge hill on the end. Yeah. So we had to do that 4 times. It was really hard. Yeah. And it was terrible temperature that day, et cetera. But at any rate, soon after that, I would say in about 1977, I started doing television commentary. Yeah. And from then on, I did TV commentary one way or the other of the New York City Marathon. So basically for about 30 years, I had covered the race from a sidecar of a motorcycle or the inside of a TV studio. But in 2017, coming off the heels of a really successful Boston, I said, I'm going to run New York. And so 43 years after I won it, I ran through the streets for the first time, and it was absolutely fabulous. You're right.
Yeah. What I love about it is that the whole city gets behind you. You know, it's not like New York doesn't care. Actually, I think it's like one of the things they must care most about.
They do.
And like you wear your medals afterwards, and people are like on the way back to the apartment we were staying, and people were blown away that we'd done it and congratulated us and only the way the Americans can, you know. And then we saw people out the next day and the next day wearing their medals, and we just feel this real sense of camaraderie and community with those people. And equally, like, people were continuing to congratulate them. You could never do that in New Zealand, you know?
I know. It is phenomenal. Well, because in New Zealand, nobody would wear their medal in New Zealand because they don't want to be skiting, right? Yeah. Or a turkey, you know, you turkey wearing your medal, right? But in New York, everybody, and the streets, I mean, imagine this, because this is, we're going audio right now. Imagine the clinking sound, which you remember, of all those medals clinking on the street and people laughing. And there are signs outside of restaurants that would say, wear your medal to dinner here tonight and get a free drink, you know? And sometimes, I mean, I remember walking down the street and somebody just put some flowers in my hand, you know, just the enthusiasm is really great. And maybe that'll happen in New Zealand. But as Roger said, after he ran his first New York City Marathon, he said, the Americans certainly know how to give a party.
They really do. What do you think it is about the marathon that just brings that, like, New York is a big city. There are a lot of really important things that happen. So what is it about the marathon that seems to bring this kind of collective community?
It's almost like everybody going to church or something together. You know, they have this bond. It's really interesting, actually, on Marathon Day. Do you know New York has its lowest crime rate of the entire year? Interesting. And you'd think, well, this is an ideal time to rob all the apartments because nobody's at home. Yeah. But it's a sense of community pride and can do. And I think essentially New Yorkers in particular being really aggressive, hardworking, you know, upwardly mobile, striving upwardly mobile people. Even poor people come to New York to try to find fame or fortune, okay? Everybody is, you know, this is a city, you know, it never sleeps. And they're all out there. And I think that it's one reason why New York City has grown to be 55,000. It could be 100,000. They turned down 50,000 people. So that 55,000 people are running. You know, you come out and you watch that race and you realize that, hey, I don't have to be particularly talented. You see people without arms, legs, blind people. Yeah. You know, there's a guy pushing him without really arms or legs, you know, getting pushed along. So you realize, I can do that. If he can do that, I can do that. Yeah, it's a sense of that I can do feeling. Yeah.
It is amazing. And I think one of the things which has been really interesting over the last year, and is of course the pandemic, and that so many of the races have been shut down, and I wonder whether we'll get back to this place where we're able to enjoy it the way that it once was. I don't know.
Well, Mikki, that's the big question. And as I said, I just got off another call this morning, and I was talking to really one of my best girlfriends, and I said, she said, "Are you coming back in time for the Boston Marathon, which has been moved to October the 10th, with a limited field of 20,000, which I think is huge. Basically, don't know how they're actually going to do it." And I said, "Oh, sure, I'll be back if it's really back." But what is running? We are always speculating. What is running going to look like? I remember about 10 years ago, saying to Roger, I guess coming in from the New York City Marathon, I said, this is an epidemic on the run. And I said, all of these people are spending hours in the same starting area together, using the same toilet, sharing cups of water, drinking, hugging, and then they're in the race and they're sweating and hugging and they're spitting on each other, not intentionally, but there's a lot of spit going on. Yeah. Really, it's not very hygienic.
Yeah.
And it's quite amazing to me that something serious hasn't happened before now. Yeah. So can we afford to do that? So health-wise. So maybe what we do is there's going to be a different model, but I happen to think it's going to be just as effusive and just as enthusiastic. I don't think we have to be squashed body to body to be enthusiastic. Yeah. And to have that same sense of spirit.
Yeah. No, I like that optimism, Kathrine. That's really good.
I'd die if I didn't have optimism.
No, I 100% appreciate that. So normally you'd spend maybe half your time, is it, over in New York, half your time in Wellington? Is that sort of how it's been?
I would love to think I actually spent half my time in Wellington, but it was getting narrower and narrower and narrower. We were mostly down to about 3.5 months in New Zealand. And with mostly the summertime, like December, January, February. But, along about in March, commitments got earlier and earlier and earlier. And then we would sneak off for a couple of weeks in August to get back to check the kids in the house and all that kind of stuff. August isn't the greatest time to be in Wellington, although this August was great. But this lockdown has just been fabulous for us. I mean, I hate to sound gloating and not sympathetic to a lot of people who are suffering, badly suffering. But it was a very good time for us. Good training time, trying to just get settled, get through a lot of junk that I hadn't done for years, and get to know my husband again, Yeah. I've been on the road so much. We've had a wonderful time together.
That's so great to hear. And so, Kathrine, outside of, obviously, we talked about the back exercises and your very unfortunate accident earlier this year, what do you do now to keep yourself staying fit and well?
Oh, well, definitely running is the key thing. And I'm back up to, trying to jog, and I'm managing to do, 2 minutes and then walk 4 minutes, jog 2 minutes, walk 4 minutes. And then I'll just try to increase that, going to physio, getting over the injury. Okay. But then running, essentially what I do is run on one day and then the other day do core work, and weight work. And I to make it effective, you got to work it hard. Yeah. And I don't like it a lot.
But you do it.
I have to. Yeah. I like it after I've done it.
Yeah. Isn't it?
Whereas running, I love doing it.
Yeah. It's so great. And now I remember actually from your book, you said that when you were beginning to run to get fit for field hockey, you took it upon yourself to have like a glass of milk and a peanut butter sandwich after dinner because you knew that you needed strong muscles to be a strong runner.
Oh, well, you remember that part of the story. What I was trying to do is get boobies.
Oh.
And I was so skinny that I thought if I looked up, I was a pretty clever kid. I would read these caloric charts. Yeah. And the highest calorie things were chocolate and peanut butter. And so I figured if I had a chocolate milk and a peanut butter and jelly sandwich before I went to bed and slept on it, because they also said, eat earlier in the day so that you burn it off before you sleep.
Yeah.
I said, okay, great. If I sleep on it, then it'll make it twice as calorific.
Yeah.
And you know what? Of course, I hit puberty. That was the big thing. But I gained about 15 pounds. What is that? Like how many kilos?
About 7.5.
7 kilos.
Yeah.
About 7 kilos in a year.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget the moment when the magic happens, as you know, with children overnight, right?
Yeah.
And I remember my father coming home from work one day, and I gave him a big hug, and he said, "Hi, honey, how are you?" And then I heard him in the other room, and he said, "When did that happen?" It's like it's overnight, you know.
Oh, that's so funny. Oh. So obviously as a nutritionist, that's probably one of the, it's funny with books actually, Kathrine. I don't know what you like with books, but after I finish reading a book, I remember the feeling of reading it, and I remember the general gist of what goes on. But I mean, if anyone asked me for plot details, I'd be rubbish. But I get that. But I do, like, as a nutritionist, they're probably the things I pick up on is, the food-related stuff. Favorite food for you, Kathrine?
Favorite food?
Yeah.
Oh, without a doubt, it's pasta.
Oh.
And I know that's not the best thing, but I mean, I'm a total sucker for Italian food.
Love it.
And I'm totally in heaven in Italy with a different kind of pasta and a different kind of sauce every night. Or so. Yeah. It's just, but I eat a very healthy diet, and again, lockdown has been good for that. Maybe too much of it, a little COVID kilo here and there, but basically lots and lots of vegetables. I've tried to move instead of from a carbohydrate, main thing. That's on the side. But there's lots and lots of vegetables and always a salad.
Yeah.
I could care less about sweet things.
Yeah. Oh, it's about
but don't get me started on salt. Yeah. Salt and coffee.
Salt. Oh, yeah. And coffee is a health food, and actually people probably don't appreciate how much we need sodium, and particularly as runners, we sweat. You actually need to replace it 100%. Yeah.
Oh, keep telling me that. Keep telling me as I drink my second cup of coffee here.
Well, if you ever want that message to your 261 Fearless group, I'm more than happy to get on and tell them all about the importance of sodium.
Okay. You're a nutritionist?
I'm a nutritionist. Yes, I am.
Oh,
yeah.
Fantastic. Okay. Well, we'll talk to you again more about that later. That's great.
Fantastic. So, Kathrine, I'm mindful of your time. You've been working since 5, but I do just want to know, do you have a favorite run? Do you have a favorite race? But a favorite memory? Just anything which you kind of, I don't know, find yourself thinking back to in certain times and just get that real sense of, amazing.
Yeah. I tell you what, it was the happiest day of my life. It was April 19th, 2017, when I ran the Boston Marathon for my 50th anniversary.
Oh, amazing.
And I'm going to write my second book about it because the pressure was enormous on me to be 70 and to run 50 years later. A woman had never run 50 years later, a marathon 50 years later. No, and that doesn't mean I'm terrific. It means how few women ran, 50 years before. But there was a lot of pressure. And also it was the year finally at Boston when we hit 50-50 men and women. And can you imagine the feeling of having been the only woman wearing a bib number in 1967 to now being surrounded by 13,500 women wearing bib numbers. And every one of them knew the story. 125 of them, in fact, were wearing 261 shirts and had raised money to create the nonprofit globally, who their contributions sent us global. And everybody on the street knew the story.
Yeah.
And women were out there holding big signs that said, 261, go, Kathrine. And they gave me, of course, bib number 261 again.
Yeah.
And then coming down the finish line and waiting for me with a medal was Joanne Flaminio, who was the first woman president of the Boston Athletic Association in 135 years.
My goodness.
And my husband, Roger.
Oh.
I wasn't expecting him because he was working really hard in the press room because he was covering the story. And he got out there and I said, I've always wanted to kiss my lover at the finish line of a marathon, and this is going to be very embarrassing for him, but
you're going to do it.
There it was, right on network news, right? But it was a sense of huge gratitude for my health. If anybody can get sick, anybody can get injured, but it didn't happen to me. And so I was enormously, enormously grateful. That was my overwhelming feeling. And it all had come together. So what can I tell you? It was the best day of my life. It was one of those moments. I only think I've done this once or twice, which is you look up and you say, okay, I'm ready. You can take me now.
Amazing.
I'm ready to go. It doesn't get better than this.
Kathrine, what a fabulous story. And I will just, close out by saying thank you so much. I have so much gratitude to you. Like, you really have, given us the gift of running. And only a runner will know what that even means. I am honoured to be talking to you today, and I'm just so grateful. So thank you.
You're so welcome, Mikki. And thank you to you and women like you who are spreading the word, sharing your enthusiasm, and getting a lot of women just to take that first step of putting one foot in front of the other. It means the world, and it helps contribute to what I think has been one of the greatest social revolutions of our time. Yeah. And it's only going to get better thanks to women like you. So Thank you, Mikki. That
is awesome, Kathrine. And so can you tell us, how can people find out more about 261 Fearless?
Okay, 261fearless.org, O-R-G. Just go online. We would love you to join us. We would love you to start a club as soon as we get the training back going. We can train you as a coach or a club leader, and we would love to have you part of this global organization. Or you can just contribute and be a member. Yeah. We would love that, and be a part of a global community of women. Yeah. More about me is marathonwoman.com. And you said you love my book, but we haven't had a chance. We'll do another podcast with this, which is it's in the works for a feature film, which is going to be great.
That is amazing. Well, I cannot wait for that, Kathrine.
Well, I'm a little nervous about it, but I think it should be okay.
Thank you so much for your time.
You're welcome. Thank you for asking.
So team, hope you really enjoyed that. And honestly, for anyone who is interested in exploring running a little bit further, or who wants to get involved in the 261 Fearless group, be it to learn to be a coach or to just connect with like-minded individuals who share the same kind of values and the same interest in being active, absolutely go to 261fearless.org and you can connect with like-minded individuals. And of course, for the guys listening to this, you know where to direct the females in your life as well. Now you can also contact Kathrine or find her on Facebook and on Instagram, Kathrine Switzer, and her website, kathrineswitzer.com. Highly recommend her book. So well written, just an absolute page turner, and she really just goes into all of the details in and around her career as an activist for women worldwide. Cool team, so have a fabulous week. Next week I am bringing to you my conversation with Dr. Tommy Woods. Anyone that is in the health and wellness scene, into longevity, into athlete development or health, who is a regular listener of Nourish, Balance, Thrive, will know Tommy Wood from that arena. So keep an eye out for that. And until then, connect with me over on Facebook at Mikki Williden Nutrition, over on Twitter and Instagram at mikkiwilliden.com, or over on my website, mikkiwilliden.com, where you can sign up to one of my online nutrition coaching programs or book an individual consultation with me. On that note, I have just launched my Monday Matters guided 8-week fat loss program that incorporates protein-sparing modified fasts. You might remember that I spoke to Craig Emmerich all about that. Incorporates diet breaks. Dr. Eric Helms and I talked about that as a way to practice maintenance, and as a guided program that you are able to connect with me and other people going through that fat loss journey at the same time. So it's perfect for those wanting to get into shape for the summer or in shape for the ski season, depending on where in the world you are. So that's available over on my website, mikkiwilliden.com. Until then, team, have a fab week. Look forward to connecting with you next week.